You think I don't know who you are? The message burned on Ethan's phone at 2 a.m., slicing through the silence of their Seattle penthouse. His wife Jessica's lies hung in the air, but this wasn't her. It was a threat, a spark in the dark. Tonight, Ethan would choose his next move. Ethan Moore, 38, was a ghost in the dazzling world of Jessica, 35, a marketing director who ruled Seattle's tech scene. To everyone, he was her husband, a quiet programmer grinding out freelance code while she closed deals with a smile that could sell anything. They lived in Belltown, where status was everything, but for Ethan, it was a cage. Jessica fed on attention, throwing parties where she shone, and he vanished into the background. Her friend Lauren, a careerist with a razor-sharp tongue, loved to strike. Ethan, still coding in your basement? She'd jab, smirking over her wine. Jessica never stopped her. She'd laugh, her eyes skipping over him like he was air. Ethan smiled back, but each word lodged in his chest, fueling a fire he kept hidden. He wasn't idle. Behind a locked office door, Ethan built something no one saw coming. He was the founder of Nexlify, a tech company concealed by a maze of shell firms. Jessica and Lauren worked there, unaware he pulled every string. He'd hired them through proxies, not out of kindness, but to watch. Ethan knew Jessica's secrets, late-night calls, meetings she dismissed with a wave. He didn't call her out. He didn't need to. Her betrayal was clear, not in whispered affairs, but in the way she erased him, and he was already planning his counterstrike. The first blow landed at one of Jessica's parties, the room alive with tech moguls and their egos. Lauren, emboldened by the crowd, went for the kill. Ethan, ever think about a real job? Or are you just Jessica's fan club? Laughter erupted. Jessica sipped her drink, silent. The sting was sharp, but Ethan kept his face blank. He poured more wine, his mind racing. That night, he couldn't sleep. He replayed the moment. Then further back, 5 years ago, when Jessica convinced him to sell his startup. It's for our future, she'd said. He'd poured his savings into her career, watched her climb while he became a punchline. She hadn't just betrayed him. She'd stolen his dream and called it hers. Ethan launched Nexlify in secret the day Jessica told him to get serious. He worked in the shadows, building a company that outshone Seattle's giants. Using aliases, he stayed invisible, a specter in his own empire. Jessica and Lauren thought they'd earned their Nexlify roles through grit. They didn't know Ethan had screened their applications, placed them where he could track their every move. He wasn't just a coder. He was a chess master, and they were pawns in a game they didn't see. Jessica's parties grew louder, her absences longer. Ethan noticed her tone turn cold, her patience gone. She stopped asking about his work, assuming he was scraping by on freelance pay. He let her think that. It kept her blind. He monitored her deals, her secret calls, her lies. Each jab from Lauren, each shrug from Jessica, pushed him harder. He wasn't angry. Not yet. He was patient, collecting evidence like a predator setting traps. They thought he was nothing. They were wrong. That night's message wasn't from Jessica. Ethan stared at it, his pulse hammering. Someone at Nexlify was onto him. He didn't know who, but it didn't matter. He'd built this company from nothing, and he wouldn't lose it. Jessica's betrayal had driven him here, but the threat sharpened his resolve. He opened his laptop, pulling up Nexlify's encrypted files. Every email, every deal, every lie was there, ready. He wasn't the man they mocked. He never had been. The next morning, Ethan moved fast. He contacted his legal team, ensuring every step would be airtight. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for the truth. Jessica and Lauren thought they owned Nexlify, but they were about to learn who really held the board. Ethan paused, thinking of Ellie, a programmer at Nexlify who'd caught his eye. She'd nearly guessed his secret once, laughing over a bug he'd fixed anonymously. "Whoever wrote this is a genius," she'd said. He'd shrugged it off, but her words stuck. She was sharp, honest, the kind of ally he might need. Jessica came home late that day, her voice clipped. "Big meeting tomorrow," she said, not looking at him. Ethan nodded, his face neutral. She didn't know he'd be there, not as her husband, but as the man who'd built everything she claimed. He didn't sleep that night. He reviewed his files, cross-checked every piece of evidence. The message from last night gnawed at him. Was it Lauren? Someone else? He pushed the thought aside. Doubt was a luxury he couldn't afford. He had one shot to expose them, and he wouldn't miss. By dawn, Ethan was ready. He left before Jessica woke, driving to Nexlify's downtown office. The receptionist blinked when he walked in, recognizing him not as Jessica's shadow, but as someone else. "Mr. Moore," she said, her voice tight. He nodded, heading to the top floor. The boardroom waited, the stage for his reveal. Jessica and Lauren thought they were untouchable. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Ethan woke to the memory of Lauren's jab at the party, her words still stinging. Jessica's fan club, she called him, and the room had laughed. Jessica hadn't flinched, her silence cutting deeper than the insult. He stared at the ceiling, the weight of years pressing down. He'd given up his startup for her, poured his dreams into her career, only to become a shadow. That moment at the party wasn't just a jab. It was the first crack in a lie he'd lived. He got up, checking his phone. No new messages since the anonymous threat. He didn't know who sent it, but it sharpened his focus. Jessica was still asleep, her phone buzzing with notifications she'd ignore until noon. Ethan slipped into his office, locking the door. He opened Nexlify's encrypted files, scanning the evidence he'd collected. Jessica and Lauren weren't just mocking him. They were betraying the company he'd built. He found emails where Lauren inflated performance metrics, boosting her bonuses. Jessica had signed off on them, her name tied to every lie. Ethan's jaw tightened. This wasn't just personal. It was theft. At breakfast, Jessica barely looked at him. "Big pitch today," she said, scrolling her phone. Ethan nodded, his face blank. She didn't know he'd seen the pitch deck. Her latest move to claim credit for Nexlify's AI division, a project he'd greenlit in secret. He let her talk, her voice sharp with ambition. "If this lands, I'm set for the board," she said. Ethan smiled faintly. She thought Nexlify was her ladder. She didn't know he held the rungs. Later, at a coffee shop, Ethan met Ellie, the Nexlify programmer who nearly guessed his secret. "You fixed my code last month," she said, leaning forward. "No one else caught that bug. Who are you, really?" Ethan hesitated. He liked Ellie's bluntness, her drive. "Just a guy who sees things," he said. She raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. He steered the talk to Lauren's metrics. "Something's off," Ellie said. "Her numbers don't add up." Ethan nodded. "Keep digging," he said, planting the seed. He needed allies, and Ellie was sharp enough to help. Back home, Jessica was prepping for another party. Ethan watched her, noting the tension in her voice as she barked orders at caterers. She thrived on these nights, where she could play the star. He poured wine for guests, his eyes on Lauren as she worked the room. She cornered him by the bar, her smile venomous. "Ethan, you're so reliable," she said, the word dripping with mockery. Jessica's lucky to have a guy who stays out of the way. The jab landed, but Ethan didn't flinch. "I try," he said, his tone flat. Lauren laughed, moving on. He clenched his fist, the pain of being erased fueling his resolve. That night, after the guests left, Ethan sat alone, replaying every moment. Jessica's silence at Lauren's jabs wasn't new. It had started years ago when she'd push him to sell his startup. "We'll build something together," she'd promised. Instead, she'd taken his money, his ideas, and left him behind. He opened his laptop, pulling up a contract from those days. His name was on it, buried under layers of legalese. Jessica had signed it, tying her to his assets. She'd forgotten, but he hadn't. It was his first weapon. The next day, Ethan dug deeper into Nexlify's files. He found more. Jessica had approved shady vendor deals, funneling funds to accounts Lauren controlled. The numbers were clean on the surface, but Ethan traced the threads. It was deliberate, a scheme to siphon Nexlify's profits. His company, his blood. He saved every email, every transaction, his hands steady but his heart racing. This wasn't just about pride. It was about taking back what was his. Ellie texted him later. "Lauren's metrics are fake. I found the raw data." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Send it," he replied. Her files confirmed what he'd suspected. Lauren had doctored reports for months, with Jessica's approval. Ethan forwarded the evidence to his lawyers, his mind clear. He wasn't fighting for revenge. He was fighting for truth. But doubt crept in. What if Jessica found out? What if the anonymous sender struck first? He pushed the thoughts away. He'd come too far to stop. Jessica came home late. Her voice clipped. The pitch went perfectly, she said, not looking at him. I'm untouchable now. Ethan nodded, his face neutral. She didn't know he'd seen the pitch, knew it was built on lies. She didn't know he was steps ahead. He waited until she slept, then opened his laptop again. The anonymous message stared back. You think I don't know who you are? He traced the IP, but it was a dead end. Someone at Nexlify was watching, and they weren't bluffing. Ethan leaned back, his mind racing. The pain of Jessica's betrayal, Lauren's mockery, the years of being erased, it all crystallized. He wasn't just fighting for Nexlify. He was fighting for himself, for the man he'd buried to keep Jessica's dream alive. He typed a reply to the anonymous sender. You don't know me, but you will. He hit send, his hand steady. The game was on, and he was done playing shadow. Ethan's phone buzzed with a new message from Ellie. Lauren's pushing a new deal. It's shady. Check the server. He opened his laptop, diving into Nexlify's files. The deal was a vendor contract, inflated beyond reason, with Jessica's signature on every page. Ethan's stomach twisted. She wasn't just complicit, she was neck deep in the scheme. He saved the files, his hand steady but his mind racing. This was bigger than he'd thought, and the anonymous threat from 2 nights ago loomed larger. Someone was watching. Jessica burst through the door that evening, her voice electric. I got it, she said, not looking at him. I'm on Nexlify's board. Ethan froze, his pulse hammering. She'd climbed higher, using his company as her stage. Congratulations, he said, his tone flat. She didn't notice, already texting someone. He watched her, the woman who'd erased him, now stealing his empire. The betrayal cut deeper than any party jab, sharper than Lauren's smirks. He wasn't just her husband anymore. He was her target. The next morning, Ethan met Ellie at a diner. The deal's a front, she said, sliding her tablet across the table. The vendor doesn't exist. Lauren set it up, but Jessica's the one cashing in. Ethan scanned the data. Fake invoices, wired funds, all approved by his wife. How do you find this? He asked. Ellie grinned. You're not the only one who sees things. Her trust sparked something in him, a reminder he wasn't alone. Keep this quiet, he said. We're close. She nodded, but her eyes held a question she didn't ask. He didn't answer. Not yet. Back home, Ethan's lawyers confirmed the evidence was airtight. We can take this to compliance, they said. It's enough to fire them both. Ethan hesitated. Firing Jessica wasn't enough. He needed her to see him, to know he'd built everything she claimed. But doubt gnawed at him. What if the anonymous sender struck first? What if Jessica suspected him? He pushed the fear aside, focusing on the plan. He'd expose them at the board meeting, where they couldn't hide. That afternoon, Jessica was on the phone, her voice low. Ethan caught fragments. Make sure it's clean, and no one checks. He slipped into his office, pulling up Nexlify's servers. Her call was about the vendor deal, a last-minute push to bury the funds. He traced the transaction, his fingers flying. The money led to an offshore account, one Jessica thought was untraceable. He saved the proof, his heart pounding. She wasn't just betraying him. She was dismantling his company piece by piece. Ellie texted again, servers acting weird. Someone's poking around. Ethan's blood ran cold. The anonymous sender. He checked the logs, finding traces of a hack attempt. Someone had tried to access his files, the evidence he'd built against Jessica and Lauren. He fortified the servers, his mind racing. Was it Jessica, Lauren, or a third player? He couldn't wait to find out. He called Ellie. Lock your access, he said. We're being watched. She didn't hesitate. On it. You sure about this? Ethan paused. I have to be, he said, hanging up. The hack attempt was no accident. Ethan dug deeper, finding a digital fingerprint tied to a Nexlify contractor. Jessica had hired them last month, claiming it was for consulting. He cross-checked the contractor's emails, uncovering a directive from Jessica to dig into the founder's records. She was hunting him, trying to unmask Nexlify's creator. Ethan's chest tightened. She didn't know it was him, but she was close. Too close. He forwarded the emails to his lawyers, his resolve hardening. She'd set him up, but he'd turn her trap against her. That night, Jessica came home late, her voice sharp. "Big board meeting tomorrow," she said, not meeting his eyes. "I'm presenting the AI strategy." Ethan's jaw clenched. That was his strategy, his vision. "Sounds big," he said, keeping his tone even. She nodded, distracted, already texting. He watched her, the woman who'd taken everything, his startup, his pride, now his company. The pain was raw, but it fueled him. He wasn't just fighting for Nexlify. He was fighting for the man she tried to erase. Ethan barely slept, reviewing his plan. The board meeting was his chance to strike. He'd walk in, reveal himself as Nexlify's founder, and lay out the evidence. Jessica and Lauren would crumble, their lies exposed. But the anonymous threat haunted him. "You think I don't know who you are?" He traced the message again, hitting another dead end. Whoever it was, they were inside Nexlify, and they were dangerous. He texted Ellie, "Be ready tomorrow. It's time." She replied instantly, "I've got your back." Her trust steadied him, a lifeline in the storm. The morning of the board meeting, Ethan moved like a man possessed. He sent the evidence to compliance, ensuring every email, every transaction was logged. His lawyers were on standby, ready to act. He checked the servers one last time, confirming the hack attempt had failed. Jessica's contractor had come up empty, but the close call left him rattled. He looked at his phone, the anonymous message still unanswered. He typed a reply, "You'll see who I am tomorrow." He hit send, his heart steady. Jessica had betrayed him, set him up, but he was steps ahead. The boardroom waited, and he was ready to take back his life. Ethan sat in his office, staring at the anonymous message. "You'll see who I am tomorrow." He'd sent it to the unknown watcher, a bold move that could backfire. Jessica's betrayal, her shady deals, her board appointment, her attempt to unmask Nexlify's founder, had pushed him to the edge. Doubt clawed at him. What if she outplayed him? What if the board didn't believe him? He pushed the fear down, focusing on the evidence. Tomorrow's meeting was his chance to reclaim his life, but he had to act now. He called Ellie, his voice steady. "The board meeting's at noon. I'm going in as Nexlify's founder. You ready?" She didn't hesitate. "I've got the raw data on Lauren's fake metrics. It's locked down." Ethan exhaled, her trust anchoring him. "One more thing," he said. "The hack attempt, Jessica's contractor. Can you trace it?" Ellie paused. "Already did. It's tied to her personal email. She's desperate." Ethan's jaw tightened. Jessica wasn't just betraying him. She was hunting him. "Send it to my lawyers," he said, hanging up. Ellie's evidence was another nail in Jessica's coffin. Ethan met his legal team downtown, handing over the final files. Lauren's falsified reports, Jessica's signed vendor deals, the offshore accounts, and now the hack attempt. "This is enough for termination," his lawyer said. "Compliance will back you. The board can't ignore it." Ethan nodded, but his mind churned. Termination wasn't enough. He needed Jessica to see him, to know he'd built Nexlify while she mocked him. But the risk was real. If the anonymous sender was someone on the board, they could derail everything. He decided to move forward. Hesitation was surrender. Back home, Jessica was on the phone, her voice sharp. "Make sure the AI pitch is perfect," she snapped, unaware Ethan was listening. He knew the pitch, his vision, stolen and repackaged as hers. He slipped into his office, checking the servers. The hack attempt had failed, but Jessica's contractor was still probing. Ethan fortified the system, his fingers flying. Then he found it, a hidden email from Jessica to the contractor. "Find the founder. I need leverage." His heart sank. She was closer than he'd thought, but her desperation was his advantage. He saved the email, forwarding it to his lawyers. That night, Ethan barely slept, his mind wrestling with the weight of tomorrow. He'd spent years in Jessica's shadow, swallowing her jabs, Lauren's insults, the world's pity. The pain of being erased had built Nexlify, but it had also broken him. He thought of Ellie, her grin when she called him a genius. She saw him, not the shadow Jessica made him. That sparked a shift. This wasn't just about exposing Jessica. It was about proving who he was. He wasn't fighting for revenge. He was fighting for truth. The next morning, Ethan woke early, his resolve ironclad. He reviewed the evidence one last time, ensuring every file was secure. His lawyers confirmed compliance was ready to act. Ellie texted, "Servers are clean. I'm in a meeting, back row. You've got this." Her words steadied him. He replied, "Thanks for seeing me." It was more than he'd said to anyone in years. He dressed, his hands steady, and drove to Nexlify's office. The receptionist's eyes widened as he walked in. "Mr. Moore," she said, her voice hushed. He nodded, heading to the boardroom. The stage was set. At the office, Ethan met Ellie in the hallway. "Jessica's already in there," she whispered. "She's prepping the AI pitch like it's hers." Ethan's chest tightened. "Let her," he said. "It's her last move." Ellie grinned, but her eyes held worry. "Be careful. Someone's watching you." Ethan nodded, the anonymous threat flashing in his mind. He didn't know who it was, but they wouldn't stop him. He'd built Nexlify from nothing, and he'd tear down their lies with the same precision. In the boardroom, Ethan waited in the shadows, his laptop ready. Jessica stood at the front, charming the board with his AI strategy. Lauren sat nearby, nodding along, her confidence unshaken. Ethan's lawyers slipped in, taking seats at the back. He checked his phone. No new threats, but the old one echoed. "You think I don't know who you are?" He typed a final reply. "You're about to." He hit send, his heart pounding. The anonymous sender was a risk, but Jessica was the real threat. She'd set him up, tried to bury him, but he was done hiding. Ethan took a breath, his decision final. He'd walk into that room, reveal himself as Nexlify's founder, and present the evidence. Jessica and Lauren would face the consequences, not just for their deals, but for years of erasing him. Doubt lingered. Could he pull this off? Would the board believe him? But Ellie's trust, his lawyer's backing, and the truth in his files silenced the fear. He wasn't the man Jessica mocked. He was the man who'd built an empire, and he was ready to claim it. As the clock hit noon, Ethan stepped toward the boardroom door. Jessica's voice carried through, confident and sharp. He paused, his hand on the handle, the weight of years lifting. This was his moment, not just to win, but to be seen. He pushed the door open, his eyes locked on Jessica. She didn't see him yet, but she would. The fight was legal, the evidence airtight, and the truth unstoppable. He was no longer her shadow. He was Ethan Moore, and he was here to take back everything. Ethan stood at the boardroom door, his hand steady as he pushed it open. Jessica was mid-sentence, pitching his AI strategy to the board, her voice brimming with confidence. Lauren sat to her right, nodding, her smirk intact. Ethan stepped inside, his laptop under his arm. Jessica's eyes flicked to him, then away, dismissing him as irrelevant. The board didn't notice him yet. He took his place at the head of the table, his lawyers and Ellie in the back row, ready. His heart pounded, but his resolve was steel. This was his moment to end their lies. He cleared his throat. "Good morning," he said, his voice cutting through Jessica's pitch. She froze, her eyes narrowing. Lauren's smirk vanished. The board turned, confused. "I'm Ethan Moore, Nexlify's founder." Gasps rippled through the room. Jessica's face drained of color, her hands gripping the table. Ethan opened his laptop, projecting the first slide. Emails, fake vendor deals, Lauren's falsified metrics, all signed by Jessica. "This is what they've done to my company," he said, his tone even but unyielding. Slide after slide, Ethan laid out the truth. Offshore accounts, doctor reports, Jessica's hack attempt to unmask him. The board sat in stunned silence. Lauren shifted, her eyes darting to the door. Jessica tried to speak. "This is absurd," she stammered. "He's just my husband." Ethan met her gaze. "I built Nexlify while you mocked me. You stole my work, my dream." He clicked to the final slide, her email to the contractor, ordering them to dig into the founder. The room went still. Jessica's mouth opened, but no words came. Ethan turned to the board. "Compliance has reviewed this. My lawyers are here. Jessica and Lauren are terminated, effective now." His voice didn't waver. The board chair nodded, pale. "We'll handle it," he said. Lawyers stepped forward, handing termination notices to Jessica and Lauren. Lauren bolted upright. "You can't do this," she snapped, but security was already at the door. Jessica stood frozen, her eyes locked on Ethan, a mix of shock and fear. He held her gaze, unflinching. "You thought I was nothing," he said. "You were wrong." Ethan left the room, his chest tight but lighter. Ellie caught up in the hallway. "You did it," she said, her grin wide. They never saw it coming. Ethan managed to nod, the weight of years lifting. "Thanks for having my back," he said. She shrugged. "Someone had to see you." Her words hit deeper than he expected. He'd been invisible too long, but now the truth was out. He checked his phone. No new messages. The anonymous sender had gone silent, their threat empty against his evidence. By afternoon, Nexlify buzzed with news. Jessica and Lauren were gone, their offices cleared. The board issued a statement. Terminations for misconduct, investigations pending. Ethan returned to his real office, one Jessica never knew existed. He sat at his desk, staring at the city skyline. The victory wasn't sweet, it was heavy. He'd exposed their lies, but the cost was years of silence, of swallowing pain. He opened an email from Ellie, raw data for the AI division, her next steps to rebuild. He smiled faintly. Nexlify would thrive, and he wasn't alone. Jessica called that evening, her voice brittle. "You humiliated me," she said. Ethan stayed calm. "You humiliated yourself. You chose the lies." She hung up, her silence louder than her words. He didn't answer her next call. His lawyers had already activated the old contract, separating their assets. Jessica had no claim to Nexlify or his wealth. She'd built her life on his dream, but now she'd face the consequences alone. Weeks later, Ethan sold the penthouse and moved to a quiet house outside Seattle. He walked the halls, free from Jessica's shadow. One night, he found an old photo in a drawer, him and Jessica, years ago, smiling at a startup event. He stared at it, his chest tight. He'd loved her once, believed in their future, but she'd chosen ambition over him, and he'd chosen truth over her. He set the photo down, not tearing it, not keeping it, just letting it be. That man was gone. Nexlify changed fast. Ellie took over the AI division, her vision pushing the company forward. The board shrank, the culture shifted. No more lies, no more egos. Employees stopped whispering, started building. One coder stopped Ethan in the hall. "It feels different now," he said. "Like we can breathe." Ethan nodded. That's the point. He didn't want praise. He wanted a company that worked, that valued truth over flash. Ethan got an email from a university asking him to speak on ethical leadership. He hesitated, then accepted. Not to preach, but to share what he'd learned. Silence can be a weapon, but truth is a shield. The day he spoke, Ellie was in the audience, grinning. Afterward, she teased him. Not bad for Shadow. He laughed, the sound foreign but real. Jessica was in Portland now. Her name faded from Seattle circles. Lauren's new venture had collapsed, her reputation in ruins. Ethan didn't gloat. Their fall was their own. That night, Ethan stood on his porch, the stars sharp above. He'd won, not just Nexlify, but himself. The anonymous threat never resurfaced, a ghost that didn't matter. He thought of the years he'd lost, the pain he'd carried. Then he thought of Ellie, the coder in the hall, the students who'd listened. He wasn't invisible anymore. He opened his phone, typing a note. "I was never nobody." He saved it, his heart steady. The fight was over, and he was free.